illegal because it was passed without a plan to pay for it. According to Arizona's constitution, ballot measures need to have a source of funding before they are implemented. While the wage increase mostly concerns private businesses, the chamber's argument involves state contractors, such as those that are caregivers who receive state funds. Glenn Hamer, president and CEO of the Chamber of Commerce, says these workers get a raise, then it would blow a hole in the state budget. Under Prop 206, the minimum wage increased to $10 per hour on January 1st, and it will rise to $12 an hour by 2020. The Supreme Court will begin to hear oral arguments March 9th. An Arizona representative introduced a law that would allow businesses to suck on the state government a little more. House Bill 2492 aims to address the terrible tragedy of corporations having too many tax credits to deal with. Corporations, job creators, such as Raytheon and Honeywell, receive so many tax advantages already that they wouldn't be able to benefit from the newly proposed tax credits. The new extreme tax credits were passed days before the announcement that Intel would build a factory in Arizona that would provide 3,000 jobs after 3 or 4 years. The bill allows companies like Intel, Raytheon, Honeywell, and Boeing to turn their extra credits into cash rebates, or they will be able to use them to offset sales tax on supplies. State officials say the new tax credits were not brought on by the Intel deal, but were intended for a new way for the state to stay competitive. Kevin McCarthy, who runs the Tax Resource Association, says that the deal will definitely influence the Intel situation and that Arizona taxpayers will have to pick up the tab, which is about $3 million per year. And what will they do with the extra money? The Raytheon spokesman says they'll likely go to Vegas on a bender, black out, and blow it all on a failed merger. It appears that Arizona residents are looking to make a move to the Great White North. The real estate company Estately used data tracking technology to find what states across the U.S. are Googling and found out that Arizona's #1 search was how to immigrate to Canada. Residents of the state also searched for Starbucks boycott and the question, what is the ACA, more than any other state, according to the Estately's research. They also found that Massachusetts really wanted to see Paul Ryan dab, and Oregon wanted to see Nazis get punched, while California wanted to know if the world would end in 2017. It appears more likely than ever California. Canada and Arizona have a special relationship, as many snowbirds come to the Grand Canyon State every winter to pronounce "about" funny and show off their weird money. Arizona even celebrates Canada Week in February, which climaxes with the annual poutine off and politeness competition. And to answer your question, Arizona, it's damn near impossible to immigrate to Canada these days unless you pretend to be a member of ISIS. An Arizona State Senate panel approved a plan to increase vehicle licensing fees and an extension of the state gas to propane in order to raise funds for road repair. Bob Worsley proposed SB 1146, which would provide the State Highway Patrol with $120 million per year for road improvement projects. This would free up money from drying out highway funds to be used again for roads. Another Worsley proposal increased gas taxes by 10% per gallon to fund local roads, but the law requires a public vote in order to be enacted. Both bills passed a Senate panel and will now pass on to full Senate vote. Arizona has a unique way to continue legally murdering in the state by throwing some bring-your-own drug parties. With drugs used for lethal injections in short supply, a new provision in execution protocol allows attorneys of death row inmates to bring their own. The new protocol states that the inmates' counsel or other 3 parties may provide sedatives or anesthetics like sodium pentothal if they can obtain it. Megan McCracken, a lethal injection expert at UC Berkeley Law School, says the idea is quote, ludicrous. She says that an attorney wouldn't legally be able to obtain drugs and transfer them to the Department of Corrections. McCracken said that she doesn't know what they were thinking by including this provision into the protocol. Dale Bike, an Arizona public defender, says that he's at a loss to explain the provision. which he says presents ethical and legal issues. In 2011, the Danish company Lundbeck banned its product pentobarbital from being used in executions. Following the decision, Arizona illegally tried to import the drug from India, but had its shipment blocked by federal officials at Sky Harbor Airport. The last execution in Arizona was in 2014 when Joseph Wood took 2 hours to die off in a cocktail that had 15 drugs that led him gasping and gulping while he was on the gurney. If attorneys are having trouble procuring sodium pentothal, Mexican cartels said they would gladly step in and provide foreign aid. Governor Doug Ducey called off an investigation by a cosmetology board involving a man who gave free haircuts to homeless. Cosmetology student Juan Carlos Mendescoca was threatened by the board after he offered the free haircuts earlier this month. The board was investigating a complaint against him when he was practicing without a license. Ducey wrote a letter to the board, writing that he found the investigation, quote, outrageous, and called on the board to end the investigation and waive any fees or penalties. He later tweeted that, "Our job as public servants is to support our citizens' effort to improve the lives of others, not threaten them." Mendescoca said he wasn't expecting the governor's support, but he is grateful for his efforts. He says he will continue to aid those in need and hope to establish a salon on wheels in his hometown of Douglas. The cosmetology board did not respond to his inquiries made by Tucson News, but previously said that it stands by its investigation. Nice job, Ducey. And I wanted to take a moment to talk about the program you're watching right now. Here at 5 on 20, we're undertaking a new kind of citizen journalism. We're going to give you the news as we see it, and we want more people to speak up with us. We need writers, hosts, anchors, camera people, sound people, the whole gamut. The times require a new way of informing ourselves, so join us. Do it now. Email us at info@creativetucson.org to get involved. And if you think there's a story we're missing or a person we should interview, an upcoming event we should cover, or have any tips for us, shoot us an email at info@creativetucson.org. We are here for you, and we want to cover all the stories from all points of view, so don't be strangers. Now in national and international news. Donald Trump spoke at a joint conference yesterday alongside Israeli President Benjamin Netanyahu to discuss policy. Trump moved away from the 2-decade-old policy of advocating for a two-state solution between Israel and Palestine. Trump didn't completely nix the idea, but said that he would consider either solution, said, quote, "I'm happy with the one that both parties like." What a people pleaser. A two-state solution would involve Palestine establishing its own nation separate from Israel, while in a one-state solution, Palestine would be absorbed by Israel. The second option is clearly not what the Palestinians prefer and would likely lead to yet another war between the two areas, which is why statements by Trump, such as, "If Israel and Palestine are happy, then I'm happy with the one that they like best," doesn't work. Palestine has for years expressed a desire to be its own state, while Israel has refused to cede their independence. So neither nation is likely to be happy, and by Trump only meeting with Netanyahu, he's essentially giving Israel a blank check to do whatever they want. But Trumpelthilskin did deliver a slight wrist slap when he talked about Israel's recent decision to expand 6,000 housing settlements to Palestine. In beast mode, Trump said, "I'd like to see you pull back on settlements for a bit," which is like politely asking ISIS to cut out the explosive vest things for a few months. Netanyahu shrugged off the comment and said that the settlements are, quote, "not the core of the conflict." Way to give it to him, Trumpster. The conference ended when Trump giving Netanyahu a firm neck rub while asking him to please stop trying to reignite a war in the Middle East. A 23-year-old Seattle man who was in the U.S. under DACA protection was detained by ICE officers on Wednesday. A federal judge demanded to hear an explanation as to why Daniel Ramirez Medina was held by authorities when he was approved to stay in the U.S. in 2014. Under the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, or DACA, children under 16 who are brought in the U.S. by their parents are supposed to be safe from deportation. Medina came to the U.S. with his parents when he was 7 years old. This is the first case of DACA recipient being taken into custody by immigration officials. This follows a mass immigration raid that took place over the weekend and resulted in the capture of 600 undocumented citizens. On May 5, 2016, Medina's DACA permit was reapproved, and Medina having to pay a fee to register with the government and going under an extensive background check to receive a work permit. ICE officials say that Medina admitted to being gang-related, a detail that right-wing media sites like Breitbart seized upon to justify the detainment. However, Medina's lawyers say that his client was pressured to admit gang affiliation by immigration officials. In Medina's lawsuit, it also claims that he received no assurance when he called the hotline number and is supposed to provide help if the DACA recipient is incorrectly detained. The Trump administration has stated repeatedly that the executive order instructing law enforcement to target undocumented citizens would exempt DACA recipients, and has no change to the law has been made. The Southern Poverty Law Center released a report yesterday finding that anti-Muslim far-right groups in the U.S. tripled in 2016. The report credited Donald Trump's, quote, incendiary rhetoric as one of the reasons why the group increased from 34 to more than 100 last year. And it mentioned that White House officials such as Steve Bannon, Steve Miller, and Kellyanne Conway are considered to be, quote, serious anti-Muslim ideologues and are contributing to a rise. According to the report, there are 900 active hate groups currently operating in the U.S., ranging from Ku Klux Klan chapters to neo-Nazi groups to black separatist organizations. While the number is shocking, it is lower than the all-time high total of 1,018 in 2011. The report also mentions how in-persona extremist events declined in 2016, but they credit this to the far-right groups declining to have individual gatherings, instead joining a mainstream Trump rallies. Mark Potok, one of the authors, writes that they were so turned on by what is happening in the pro-Trump world that they entered the world rather than holding their own rallies. The increase of hate groups in 2016 was joined with an increase in anonymous internet-based hate websites such as the popular Daily Stormer, a site that instructs its readers to harass or trollstorm opponents. The report mentions Dylan Roof, who was convicted of killing 9 black church members in South Carolina, as someone who was radicalized online. Asked to respond to the report, Andrew Agline, who runs the Daily Stormer, said that the report is, quote, more of the same goofy gibberish from the Jews. The Trump administration did not respond to the report, but Trump has said in the past that if hate groups are energized, then, quote, I want to look into it and find out why. By looking into it, he meant his mirror. Andrew Putzer, who was Trump's pick for Labor Secretary, withdrew his consideration on Wednesday after a barrage of negative information was revealed, including spousal abuse. Putzer has already been under serious criticism for his treatment of workers while running CKE Restaurants, which owns the Carl's Jr. and Hardy fast food chains. He also admitted to employing an undocumented immigrant to be his housekeeper years ago. The biggest revelation was an old appearance by his wife, who appeared in disguise on the Oprah Winfrey Show to talk about being a victim of domestic abuse. She appeared on the show credited as Ann with no last name and wore thick black sunglasses. It wasn't until this week that it was discovered to be Putzer's wife. A lawsuit was also launched against Putzer last week, accusing him of wage fixing while at CKE Restaurants. The lawsuit alleges that Putzer made it impossible for managers to switch to another CKE establishment in order to receive a higher pay, which prevented employees from seeking out better opportunities. His defense is that the different franchised restaurants are actually independent businesses, which isn't true under normal franchises. But it doesn't matter because the Poots is gone. And in the same week, that security advisor Michael Flynn got canned, no less. Even for the typically corrupt Trump nominee, Pootzer was a terrible pick. But that didn't stop some Republicans from expressing support for him, such as Marco Rubio, who said on Twitter that Pootzer made the right choice by withdrawing. Wyoming Senator John Barrasso also pledged support for Pootzer, blaming CNN for his fall. Way to be on the wrong side of history, guys. Barrasso then went to explain on Twitter how Hitler wouldn't have been so bad if the Germans appreciated his paintings. Aetna, the third largest insurance company in the United States, says that it will begin easing rules allowing patients to receive medication to treat opioid addiction. The company will stop requiring doctors to seek approval for the insurance company before prescribing Suboxone and other medications used to treat withdrawal syndromes. Critics have claimed that their prior authorization rule prevented many people from receiving treatment they needed. This is because the wait for authorization could take as long as the addict would to change their mind or relapse by the time they were approved. Opioid addiction has ravaged the United States over the past few years, particularly in the Midwest and New England. The Center for Disease Control report found that 33,000 people died from opioid overdoses in 2015, the most recent year where statistics were available. Two other insurance giants, Anthem and Cigna, also got rid of the prior authorization rules last fall, but not because they wanted to. Both companies faced an investigation by the New York Attorney General's office, who were looking into whether they were barring patients from receiving the appropriate treatment. Well, if the common good isn't reason enough for an insurance company to change, then the threat of lawsuit will have to do it. The Pope appeared to express support for Standing Rock protest at an indigenous peoples forum in Rome. The infallible one said that the indigenous cultures had the right to defend, quote, their ancestral relationship to the earth, but held back from specifically mentioning Standing Rock. Members of the Standing Rock and Cheyenne River Sioux have been protesting the Dakota pipeline for the past year. While the pipeline was canceled under President Obama in December, the project was resumed under Trump this month with a signing statement. The tribe says that the pipeline runs through sacred ground and could potentially pollute their water if the pipeline were to leak. The Pope's statements came on the same day that Joy Mohamud, Vice President of Energy Transfer Partners, the company who will build the pipeline, compared the protesters to terrorists. Mahmoud said that the group were state-sponsored. If the group were state-sponsored, then this would be considered terrorism. He didn't mention that. By the same logic, in a foreign country took over another country's land, then that would be an invasion, but he must have forgot. Maybe the oil fumes got to his head. This isn't the first time that the Pope has found itself at odds with the Trump administration. 2 weeks ago, the New York Times reported that Breitbart Media, which was formerly run by the White House advisor Steve Bannon, has made it his mission to oust the Pope in favor of a conservative cardinal in the Vatican. It appears that the ultra-Catholic Bannon has his hair up his ass about the Pope ever since he expressed support for refugees, a position that Bannon says proves that the Pope is a Marxist. House Oversight Committee Chairman and current Dick of the Month, Jason Chaffetz, has been a busy boy lately. Earlier yesterday, Chaffetz said that his committee would not investigate ties between Russia and disgraced former Secretary Advisor Michael Flynn, who resigned on Tuesday. Depending on who you listen to, Flynn either resigned or was fired after it was discovered that he misled Vice President Mike Pence about talking to Russia officials about easing sanctions on Russia. The revelations of Flynn's calls was released by a leak from the intelligence agency, which was criticized by Trump in several 5 a.m. psycho boyfriend-style tweets. Rather than investigate the Flynn-Russian connection, Chaffetz instead asked the Justice Department to investigate the leaks that exposed Flynn. Chaffetz sent a joint letter with Virginia Representative Bob Goodlatte, which required the DOJ to conduct a, quote, immediate investigation on the matter. The letter said that the intelligence agencies said that the release of classified information can have dangerous consequences on the country, like finding out that their president is a Russian agent. And why isn't Big Schaaf investigating the matter himself? Well, it looks as though he's got enough on his plate. Schaaf, it said, is actually too busy investigating a host of other possible national security violations by the president. These include Trump apparently discussing classified information regarding North Korea while sitting at a table in his Mar-a-Lago country club with Kellyanne Conway's Ivanka Trump commercial. He's also investigating Trump's lease on the old post office building from a federal agency, and that's just this week. Schaaf looks forward to next week when he will find field scandals involving Steve Bannon choking Rabbi and Jeff Sessions accidentally getting himself caught inside a white sheet. Immigrants in cities across countries participated in a Day Without Immigrants, a nationwide strike to protest Donald Trump's immigration crackdown. Philadelphia, Washington, Boston, and Austin, Texas were the most high-profile cities to take part in the protest. A similar event took place in Wisconsin on Monday, where immigrants took part in a Day Without Latinos to show their disapproval over Milwaukee Sheriff Dave Clark's threat to crack down on undocumented immigrants. Some businesses in the D.C. area showed support for the strike, such as restaurateur John Andrade and Tequila's restaurant owner David Suro, who both closed their establishment today. Davis Museum, located in Wesley College in Massachusetts, also closed their door today in solidarity with these strikers. This was Rich Aguirre, and for 5 on 20 News, next up, Andrew Explains It All.
Hello again, everyone. This is Andrew Conlog, and this is my segment, Andrew Explains It All, where I explain all of it, or hopefully all of it, about a particular subject, about Tucson or Southern Arizona, its history or culture. And by the end, hopefully we know all of it together. And today, I'd like to talk a little bit about politics. Now, I don't ordinarily talk about politics on this segment, and I won't, partly because I'm part of this great show, 5 on 20, that really delves into good political information, be it factual or be it well-considered or interesting opinions. But this is an extraordinary time in our country's history in terms of politics, especially because we're all so divided. And what I hope to do today is to tell a story about a great Tucson patriot. And I hope that no matter what side or no matter what part of the political spectrum you're on, you find this inspiring and you find that it speaks to your own sense of patriotism. Now, I don't want to feel like anybody's been bait and switched or anything, so I will say that, of course, I inject some of my own political biases. I don't think anybody can avoid doing that. But again, my goal is to be nonpartisan first and foremost, but there will be a little bit of what I think, so I just hope you don't feel cheated by that. Now, to the story itself, I'm going to take you back once again, as I have in the past couple weeks, to the Civil War here in Arizona. Just as a quick reminder, the Confederate States of America had captured Arizona, coming in from Texas, and had captured the city of Tucson as well. Now, they'd captured it without a shot being fired because, well, partly because the citizens of Tucson were pretty sympathetic to the Southern cause, which is interesting. But the man that eventually took over the administration of the military government of the Confederacy here in Tucson was a man named Captain Sherrod Hunter. And the first thing he sought to do was consolidate the Confederacy's rule. Now, he knew that a lot of local luminaries were Southern sympathizers, but he was searching for anybody who might not be. And one particular man's name came up to him. He was a businessman, he was a politician, and he was well liked by everyone in the community, but everybody knew that he had a great affinity and loyalty to the United States. So Captain Hunter brought this man before him and essentially made an ultimatum. He said that this man could keep his property and keep his businesses and keep his prominent place in the community, And all he had to do in return was denounce any loyalty to the United States. Captain Hunter said that the United States was a thing of the past, the Confederacy was a thing of the future, and that it would only be sense if this man denounced any loyalty he had for America. And the other side of that was that if he did not renounce the United States, he would have to give up all his property, he would have to leave Tucson, he would be given one horse, one rifle, and as many provisions as he could fit on that horse, and he'd be cast out into the desert, which sounds bad, but maybe not completely bad to our modern ears. But what everybody in Tucson knew, and what this man knew, and what Captain Hunter also surely knew as he was making this offer, was that that was essentially a death sentence. If you were in a town on either side of this border, you're okay, but any of the areas between, and especially the open desert, was Apache country. And the Apaches at this time in history were very angry, understandably, and would kill any lone traveler like that, almost certainly. So this was a death sentence, basically. And the man, by all accounts, he was very polite, he was very refined and reserved, and he told Captain Hunter that he understood his offer and appreciated this meeting, but that he would never be able to renounce the United States of America because the United States had given him everything. And he wondered when a convenient time for him to begin to prepare to leave Tucson would be. And that's just what happened. He was given his horse, he was given his rifle, he was given his provisions, and he was cast out into the desert, where miraculously he did survive. I don't know exactly how he did it. I don't know if he knows exactly how he did it, but he was able to somehow make his way to New Mexico, and fortune smiled on him not long after he was able to connect with the Union troops, and they were able to get him back to Tucson after Tucson had been reconquered, and he basically started his life once again. Now, you'll notice I haven't mentioned this man's name. Well, his name was Estevan Ochoa, and he was born in the state of Chihuahua in Mexico. And he had a much more prosperous and much more service-filled life even after that. He was a prominent businessman all his life. He was part of a shipping firm that shipped by wagon from Mexico to America. It's called Tully and Ochoa. He was a partner, so named after Ochoa in there. And he was also very active politically. He was one of the first mayors of incorporated Tucson. And not only was he one of the first mayors and one of the first Mexican-American mayors, but so far he's the only Mexican-American mayor that Tucson has ever had. But his political life didn't end there. He was part of the Arizona Territorial Legislature as well. And his crowning achievement there was that he introduced the legislation that got public education to Arizona. Not a lot of people were too keen on it, but everybody who knew Estevan, and also everybody who knew Estevan liked Estevan, if we're to believe what people said. He was a very likable and loving and caring man. With his kindness, but also with his powers of persuasion, he was able to eventually get everybody on his side on public education, and public education came to the territory. Now, the job for public education wasn't quite done yet. There was a school built in Tucson, but when his fellow Tucsonans got sick of the idea as well and didn't want to finish the school, Estevan finished it with his own money. And for the rest of his life, he promoted education, even among women and girls, which was rare at that time, especially on the frontier, but he was personally responsible for getting some girls educated here in Tucson. And sort of as a cap to his life, when the Southern Pacific Railroad came through Tucson, which is a very important day in Tucson history, and the president of that railroad, Charles Crocker, came to, I guess, hit in the final spike on the rail, which was a golden spike, to celebrate. The man that handed him that golden spike at the train depot on behalf of the city of Tucson was Estevan Ochoa. And to do a final sort of editorial on this, I would just like to, I suppose, point out the obvious that right now in this country, immigration is a very big issue. And before I say anything else, for the people that are concerned about immigration, I understand your concern, and I want you to feel that I understand it, and feel that having concerns like this and having political opinions like this are legitimate. And I don't necessarily even want to change your mind on this, but all I would ask is anybody out there, maybe especially if you're not initially too keen on it, the idea of immigration, that when you think about where you're going to put your mental energy and where you're going to put your money and your time and your efforts in terms of politics on this issue, just remember this story. And especially if you're a Tucsonan, remember this story and remember this man and his really extraordinary patriotism. And I hope you can believe, and even if you can't believe it, I hope you can understand why someone like me might believe that the Esteban Ochoas of the future, the great, great patriots of America's future, and I suppose even America's present, may not be born here and may not be here yet. And that the actions we take now will have an impact on whether these extraordinary patriots ever make their way here. With that in mind, this is Andrew Conlog signing off from Andrew Explains It All. I'll see you next time.